What if the United States decided to walk away from NATO, the most powerful military alliance in history? Such a move would undoubtedly shake European defence to its core. Russia would see an opening, and the entire balance of global power could shift overnight. The question is no longer hypothetical. The consequences of a US withdrawal could change the world as we know it. For the past 75 years, NATO has served as the cornerstone of US strategy. It has helped prevent major wars in Europe, kept Russia contained, and amplified American power abroad. However, in recent years, the landscape has dramatically changed. Trump once described NATO as obsolete. He warned allies to pay up and even questioned his aides about the possibility of pulling out entirely. Trump suggested that the US might not defend its allies who fail to meet the defence spending targets, even going as far as saying he would encourage Russia to attack those nations. Such statements have already shaken NATO's primary deterrent capabilities. Here's the critical point. Even if Congress attempts to block a withdrawal, a president could refuse to honour the code of America's obligations, effectively resulting in a withdrawal without any formal signing. So let's take a closer look at what this might look like. Firstly, let's examine a partial withdrawal. In this scenario, the US would remain a member of NATO, but would reduce its involvement significantly. This could involve major troop drawdowns in Europe, where approximately 80,000 US troops are currently stationed. The country might also reduce its role in NATO command structures and question Article 5 commitments. The Collective Defence Clause would become ambiguous. This uncertainty would create a significant challenge, as uncertainty is the enemy of deterrence. Some allies, particularly nations like Poland and the Baltic states, would probably panic. Others might feel compelled to negotiate directly with Russia, leading to a NATO that exists only in name, a hollow alliance as seen in other parts of the globe. Now let's consider a full withdrawal. In this case, the United States would formally leave NATO. This would also mean closing all its American bases in Europe, removing the US nuclear umbrella over those nations, and remove automatic defence guarantees from European nations. Such a dramatic shift would likely create a global shock, affecting both markets and overall confidence in international relations. If the US exited NATO, the alliance would lose its commander, its largest military force, and the backbone of its intelligence networks almost overnight. But would NATO truly survive? Perhaps, but only in name, not as an effective power. So let's look at who stands to gain and who would lose from these scenarios. Starting with Russia, it would emerge as the biggest winner. The Kremlin has long feared NATO's unity, not the military strength of Europe alone. Without US backing, Russia could pressure Eastern European nations. They could test these countries' defences through cyber attacks or through the use of little green men, unmarked troops that create ambiguity. Furthermore, Russia would try to fracture NATO politically, leading analysts to warn that Moscow could seize a historic opportunity to redraw borders, particularly in the Baltics and Poland. On the flip side, we have China, who would gain a strategic advantage. If America were to abandon Europe, US credibility on the global stage would inevitably suffer. This situation might lead to allies in Asia, such as Japan and South Korea, to question American guarantees of security, making them consider their own nuclear arsenals for self-protection. Moving beyond Europe, the Middle East and other regions could seize a rise in opportunism. With NATO shaken, adversaries from the Iranian forces to extremist groups might take advantage of Western distraction, while both Russia and China deepen their regional presence. Now let's focus on the future of Europe without the military might of the United States. Europe is indeed wealthy, but it's currently underbuilt in terms of defence capabilities and infrastructure. To effectively replace the US as a military power, Europe would need approximately 300,000 additional troops. This would translate to an additional 250 billion euros per year in defence spending, along with a massive expansion of air, missile and naval power. While Europe could theoretically reach these levels of military readiness, the process would not happen quickly. In fact, the transition period might be fraught with dangers. A significant misjudgment during this time could lead to war. In a worst-case scenario, Russia might test NATO's resolve by invading a Baltic nation, or even Poland itself, betting that NATO would not respond militarily. And if NATO fails to respond, Article 5 would effectively die in real time. Finally, let's consider the implications of a US pullback for Ukraine, which we're already starting to see the effects of. A withdrawal from NATO would almost certainly lead to a reduction in US support for Ukraine. This could create significant pressure for an unfavourable peace agreement, effectively rewarding Russia with territorial gains. Some experts warn that Ukraine may be forced into a ceasefire on Moscow's terms, entrenching Russian control in the region and locking in a new status quo that would be unfavourable to Ukrainian sovereignty. So what does this all mean? Look, I totally understand why the US wants to pull back. The cost of the US military is absolutely enormous, and pulling back from Europe could reduce these costs, letting the US reduce its debt and spend money elsewhere. But this isn't a perfect world. There are some significant risks, as we covered in this video. It is clear that the world is changing. The US no longer wants to maintain its hegemony in the globe, which is the very thing that has ensured relative peace in Europe and to an extent globally. But firstly, if the US was to withdraw too fast and not allow Europe to build up a significant force to deter Russian aggression, it could lead to a large-scale conflict in Europe, one that would likely draw the US back in. Secondly, backing down from supporting Ukraine shows Russia and other hostile states, most notably China, that if you just drag out a war with the West long enough, they'll possibly get tired and just withdraw their support for the defenders. This is significant as China applies pressure on Taiwan, possibly giving China more confidence that military action could be the best solution. Ultimately, it appears highly likely that the US is going to change its approach to NATO, but how they do it and what they do will matter and could have much wider reaching effects than just security in Europe. But let me know what you think down below. What should the US do, and what do you think might happen? This has been HM Intelligence. If you've enjoyed the video, please give it a like and subscribe for more geopolitical breakdowns. See you!